We would like to welcome you here at the Slyman Theater, downtown New Iberia, to our forum for candidates seeking the office of Iberia Parish Clerk of Court. I'm Alice Viator, your moderator for tonight's forum. If you are standing, please move towards the front, and if you are seated, please move into the middle of your row. We are excited to see the great turnout, and we want everyone to be able to hear. Also, please silence your cell phones to minimize the distractions. Tonight's forum is sponsored by the Greater Iberia Chamber of Commerce, Iberia Comprehensive Community Health, and Leadership Iberia. There are a few announcements before we begin this evening's program. Our sponsors wish to remind you that tonight's program is purely informational. Neither the Chamber, Iberia Comprehensive Community Health Center, nor the Leadership Iberia program endorses any particular candidate running for office. The last day to register for the October 12th primary election is September 11th. Early voting runs September 28th, 2019 to October 5th, 2019, and Election Day is October 12th. Also, the Chamber is posting all the forums to their YouTube channel, youtube.com/goodnewsiberia, and to the Chamber's Facebook page at Iberia Chamber. At this time, I would like to introduce the candidates. All candidates in the race were invited to participate. Those in attendance tonight are David Ditch and Ryan Huval. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for an opening statement. We will then ask a series of questions which each candidate will have 120 seconds to answer unless otherwise noted. Each candidate has also been given 2 rebuttal cards that he can use to take 60 seconds to comment on something the other candidate said during their answer. Those candidates wishing to use a rebuttal card will hold up their card after the other candidate is finished his answer, and when recognized will get 1 minute to offer their additional thoughts. However, the candidates should be selective about when they use these cards because once their rebuttal cards have been used, they will not receive any more. If the candidate wants to use his rebuttal card, he should just hold it up so that we can see it. Do you have your rebuttal cards at your places? Everyone? Okay. To assist the candidates in keeping time, we will have a timekeeper and timing lights situated down front. Candidates, when your time begins, the green light will come on. When you have 15 seconds left, the yellow light will come on, and when your time is up, the red light will come on. At that time, you must finish your sentence. If that takes more than a few seconds, the buzzer will sound to let you know that you must stop. So we'll all know what to expect. Let's try the buzzer. Due to the limits of time and to maintain a fair atmosphere, we ask that the audience hold any applause or other comment. All the questions I will ask tonight were predetermined. Questions were solicited from the public, and then an unbiased committee reviewed the questions submitted and compiled the lists that are to be asked tonight. All questions have been kept in strict confidence, and no one except the committee members and myself have seen them. At this time, we will start opening statements. Earlier, we drew for the starting order. We will start with David Ditch and continue with Ryan Huval. The closing remarks will begin in the reverse order of the opening. Mr. Ditch, please begin your opening statement.
Good evening. First off, I would like to thank the Chamber for this great event tonight. Having been a graduate of Leadership Iberia, I couldn't be more humbled to be sitting in front of fellow graduates, in front of the Chamber of Commerce for this beautiful event tonight. My name is David Ditch. I'm honored to be your clerk of court. I'm also a father, a husband, and a proud small business owner who chose to not only keep his business here, but keep his family here. It was only 4 short years ago I sat beside my wife, Jessica. after losing an excruciating parish president's race. It was a tough time for my family. We recently had just lost my mother to a years-long battle with cancer. We'd endured a year-long campaign. And while I certainly wasn't happy about losing, that loss taught me a new perspective. It allowed me to spend the last 4 years being a better father, a better husband, and also a better leader. I've learned through that perspective, leadership is not about being the most vocal, the most critical. It's about empowering the people around you to be the best that they can be. I've done that for the last 3 years at the Clerk of Court's office. And with your help, your support, and most importantly, your prayer and your vote, I will do that and continue to do that for you for many years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. Mr. Huval?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm sorry. I was waiting on you. Well, first, I'd like to thank the Chamber as well for putting this on. I think it gives everybody a good opportunity to see what the candidates are all about. And, of course, the public for attending tonight. It shows that you really care about your parish and what's to come up with this Clerk of Court's race. My name is Ryan Huval, and I'm a candidate for the Iberia Parish Clerk of Court. The last time an election was held for Clerk of Court was over 20 years ago. And so we need to really make sure that this is, that we get this right this time. I'm seeking this office because I'm the best qualified person, and I'll go through that through this next 45 minutes about what makes me the better candidate, and I will explain it clearly and concisely to everyone that you should be able to understand when you leave here what the better direction is. First, what qualifies me for this position is my community service. One of the big things with the clerk's office is service. That's what you do. You provide a service to the public. So having that service background, that service-oriented background is important to me, and I've got 36 years in this community that I've supported this community and served this community through various ways. The second thing that qualifies me is my experience and my knowledge. You know, I've got 16 years of experience working in the Clerk of Court, and I think that it can be an asset to the group that's through this next election here, and I got a red light, and I had about 5 more qualities to go, but I'll end it there.
Thank you, Mr. Huval. Okay, we will begin with the first question, Mr. Huval, with you. You will have 180 seconds for your first question. Considering problems with procedural compliance issues of past administrations, if you are elected, what are your plans to educate yourself and your staff to be in compliance with regulatory standards?
Well, good question, especially in light of everything that's going on here lately. One of the first things that I do, I have a contract for Iberia Parish, and this is going to be on my website starting tomorrow. And one of the first items I have is maximizing the physical control over public funds. I want to make sure that these public funds are held with the highest regards, and that people understand, all in the clerk's office, that these public funds are not our funds, that they are for the public. And I want to make sure that we understand that. One of the things that I plan on doing is implementing a dual validation process where everybody's going to have 2 people that's going to verify the money that we have that's being turned in at the end of the day. We're going to separate each one of the batches that each person does, so there's no doubt about where the money's coming in from and where it's going. At the end of the day, we're going to have the employees that are going to verify their batch. They're going to bring it to their supervisor. Their supervisor will then verify it with the employee. And from then on, from that point, it'll move to the safe, which you'll have to have 2 people that'll have to sign in to get into the safe. Not everybody's going to have access to that safe like what was done in the past. And so I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that these public funds are, again, held in the highest regards to the people that are working in the clerk's office. The people that work there are good people, hardworking people. I've said this probably many times as we've walked door to door. The problem has been the leadership. There's been no guidance whatsoever on these processes here that have gone on in the past. So that's some of the things that I kind of plan on changing, is making sure that we implement this not only for the public funds, but evidence as well too. It's scary to me to think that the way that the evidence is being controlled right now, that there are keys that are floating everywhere, that anybody at any time can just go inside the evidence room and have access to cash, drugs, or whatever. Previously, at another clerk's office, there was an individual that actually stole drugs out of the clerk's locker, because it was set up basically the same way that this clerk's office is set up. And that's something that I definitely want to change, because I do not want to put the employees in any kind of way that something could be said where somebody took something out of that evidence room where they shouldn't have. So that's another thing that I'm very, very concerned about in the clerk's office, to make sure that we have all these different areas that are covered, and make sure that we have people that are, there's that dual validation there, that when we do get evidence, there are two people with separate keys, and it takes both of these people to actually get in that locker to make sure that there's no funny business that's going on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huval. Mr. Ditch?
Yes, ma'am. Can you please repeat the question?
Sure. You will have 180 seconds for the first question, and it was considering problems with procedural compliance issues of past administrations. If you are elected, what are your plans to educate yourself and your staff to be in compliance with regulatory standards?
Thank you for that question. I think it's a great question. Since becoming the clerk of court, I've had the opportunity to call in the legislative auditor, to visit with them. I've had the opportunity to retain independent auditors to ensure that those processes required by revised statute are correct. The process that we're using to move forward are laid out in a specific manner in which to retain public money. We've done that. We've also hired legal counsel to ensure that our office is not only following the revised statute, but we're following best practices in an industry, not only in the clerk of courts industry, but in government-wide accounting practices as a whole. I can tell you one thing. I have 30 of the hardest working public servants in Iberia Parish working for the clerk of courts office. I can assure you these processes that have been put in place have been done so through blood, sweat, and tears of those employees. What's happened in the past has no reflection of what's going to happen in the future. I commend each one of these employees, many of them who are sitting in this room today, for taking the time to visit with these auditors, to visit with these lawyers, to get it right. Get it right, not for me, not for David Ditch as your clerk of court, but for every one of you sitting out there that is sick and tired of your government going wrong. It almost brings me to tears to think of the hard work that those employees have put in over the last 90 days to gain your trust. We talk about trust all the time, and I can tell you, it's been one of the highest honors in my life to work with these employees. These people didn't ask for any of this. And I can tell you from the bottom of my heart, I thank each one of you. We have the processes in place to ensure conformity with law. We will do that. And as your next clerk of court, and for your clerk of court for years to come, I promise this to you. I will be a servant leader. I will lead you with a servant's heart, at the same time ensuring that every law of this great state of Louisiana is followed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. We'll begin the next question with you. How do you intend to increase transparency and rebuild trust from the community back into the clerk of court's office?
Thank you. That's another great question. Transparency is huge when you're operating with the government's dollars. I come from a long background of business, where we run a business that deals with state law. We run a business that deals with caring for individuals on a daily basis. We provide employees that go into the home and care for people that otherwise couldn't care for themselves. We have to have transparency with the care that we provide in my business. I take that issue very seriously because we're providing care for loved ones that can't be around. I'm going to do the same thing with your clerk of court's office. I'm going to do the same thing with your money. I will ensure while every document, every dollar that moves in that office is a public record, I will ensure that you have more than that. I will ensure that you have an open door policy in our office. I will ensure that every transaction we make is brought forth, reviewed, and determined to be correct by the auditors at year end. And I will commit to you today, there is nothing that will happen in this office that will not be viewed by the public. I've given every authority to every employee in our office to speak up when they see something's wrong, without a fear of retribution. Because you know what? When they're dealing with your dollars, they're dealing with your trust, they're dealing with you, the public. They should have that authority to stand up, speak up, and do what's right, and have no reason to fear their job. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. Mr. Huval?
I'm sorry, can you read it again? Tell me how much time we got.
Yes, you will have 120 seconds for this question. These are the standard questions. How do you intend to increase transparency and rebuild trust from the community back into the Clerk of Court's office?
Okay. What I plan on doing, of course, is to have more reporting that'll be done within the paper, that we'll do a progress report throughout the year. Also, I'd like to have more meetings that are held with the Iberia Parish government to let the council know, as well as the public know what's going on in your Clerk of Court's office. I want to have timely public hearings to approve the budget. So when the law says 15 days before the fiscal year begins, I'm going to make sure that we have that 15 days prior. I'll also run the ad within the 10 days that's set out in statute. So one of the most important things I feel that needs to be done is actually just plain and simply just following the law as it's stated, and not kind of making up your own law as you go to the way you think things should be handled. That's probably the biggest things that I would like to do is do that progress report in the paper to show everybody exactly where the public funds are. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Huval. And we'll begin with you on the next question. With regards to fees for filing various documents, according to the Chamber's research, in 2012, it cost $40 to file a one-page notarial bond renewal. In 2017, it cost $110 for the same filing. That's a 275% increase over the 5-year period. Do you agree?
I don't mean to stop you. Can you go back over those figures again? Not the 40, the next one.
Okay. In 2017, it cost $110 for the same filing. So a 275% increase over the 5-year period. Do you agree with this fee schedule? And please tell us why or why not.
I absolutely disagree with this bill here. Matter of fact, when it was coming up, I spoke to our delegation and I expressed my disapproval with it. And I point blank asked each one of them, is anybody from the Iberia Parish Clerk's office fighting this bill? And the answer that I got was no. So I said, well, I'm fighting it. I'm the one guy that's going to stand up against it because I think it was terrible that these fees were increased that much. And I think it was just the greed probably on the clerk's office and the Clerks Association that they did this. And I'll probably get some flack for speaking out against the association, but that's truly how I feel in my heart, that I feel that a good clerk, would go to Baton Rouge and not only just fight for an increase in salary, but fight for the citizens of Iberia Parish. And the reason why I say this is because I had an elderly gentleman that came to me, and he could not believe the cost. He wanted to file a one-page power of attorney because he was getting ready to have surgery. And he wanted to file that one page, and it was going to cost him that $110. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Well, you know what? That poor old man couldn't do it. He didn't have the money to file it, and so it ended up not being filed. And not that it needed to be filed, but it was important to him to have it filed. But this older gentleman that was on a fixed budget was unable to file that. So right now, it's currently a shall bill that there's no choice. The clerk has to charge that amount. But one of the things I plan on doing, and I actually have it within my first 100 days in my contract here, is to begin fighting for the citizens of Iberia Parish. Most people don't know what the clerk does, and they're probably content with that. But this is one of the things that has been overlooked over the past, that we've had zero representation from the clerk's office when it comes to fighting these ridiculous bills and making sure that they don't get passed for the people of Iberia Parish. Not the clerk's office, not the individual that is the clerk, but the betterment of Iberia Parish.
Thank you, Mr. Huval. Mr. Ditch?
Yes, ma'am. That's another great question. And in theory, I can tell you, I couldn't agree more with Mr. Huval. That is absolutely outrageous that an individual in this parish has to pay $110 to file a one-page document in our office. But that's not the entire story. The entire story goes to the fact that all of the recording fees were revised by statute by our legislature in Baton Rouge. That was done to support other clerk of courts offices throughout the state that were having revenue problems. With those revenue problems, they were having expense problems, and they couldn't run their offices with revenues in excess of expenses. You know what? That was a problem I was brought into this office 3 years ago to fix. I've worked tirelessly, as I did in my businesses, to ensure to have a clerk's office that excess revenues increased above expenditures. And you know what? In the last 3 years, these hardworking employees here have done just that. So I can tell you, and you should be very proud of this, probably one of the things I'm most proud about, that recording fee could be cut in half for the residents of Iberia Parish. For the poor soul that cannot afford to pay that recording fee, these hardworking employees over the last 3 years have put the office in the position that we could absorb that kind of cut in recording fees and still remain viable. And that should make you proud. That should make every one of you proud. And I will absolutely go to Baton Rouge any chance I get and talk to our senators and our legislators to make sure the clerk services remain affordable for every person in this parish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. And you'll begin our next question. What about your education, experience, or other aspects of your background makes you the best qualified candidate to serve as clerk of court for Iberia Parish?
Thank you. And before I get into my experience, I want to get into a work ethic. A work ethic that as a young boy, I watched the man I'm most proud of often leave the house at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to care for the people of this parish. He wouldn't come home till 9, 10 o'clock at night. That's right, 17, 18 hours a day caring for the residents of Iberia Parish. He taught me work ethic. My dad was a role model you couldn't look for anywhere else. Jessica and I looked to bring that work ethic, looked to show our 3 children that work ethic every day when I wake up. I started 17 years ago with my wife by my side, creating a business that I've continued to grow, a business that I spent day after day, sometimes 3 to 4 times a day, driving from New Iberia home to Houma to ensure our clients had the care they needed. I often spent many nights caring for the elderly because I couldn't afford to have anybody else do it. That is the kind of work ethic. That is the kind of experience that I'm going to bring for years to come to this clerk of court's office. My educational background, I was a graduate of LSU. I received an MBA in finance. But you know what? Education didn't teach me motivation. Education didn't teach me passion. Education didn't teach me to treat the guy who's down on his luck the same as the guy with the big house on top of the hill. I learned that from my father. And for that, I couldn't be more proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. Mr. Huval?
How much time we got for this one?
120 seconds.
Can I have more time?
No, sir, I'm sorry.
I think the best thing that qualifies me, I would say, is probably my experience, the 16 years experience that I have. I'm not a finger pointer. I don't like telling somebody something that I don't know firsthand for myself. So what I did when I was at the clerk's office was actually sat in every chair, learned every job, and not only the function of the job, like why is this paper moved from here to here, but actually why that paper was moved from there to there and the importance of it. And that has actually helped me in my role that I'm currently in now to be able to develop and design software that's used throughout the Louisiana Clerk of Court offices throughout the state here. One of the things that I'm most proud of is that I developed a program, an app that kind of fits on top of our civil program for where I work now. And it's increased the speed and efficiency that's going on in Baton Rouge right now, in East Baton Rouge, the biggest clerk's office that's in the state, or one of the biggest. And we were actually able to take that office there that nearly had 60 employees in one department, in one civil department, that was never caught up. And this software now is actually allowing them to run in a more efficient way. They now have roughly about 42 employees that work in the civil department. And I was just there last week, and the lady, the little supervisor that we dealt with, she was so proud to let me know. She flagged me down and she said, you want to know our numbers and how well we are caught up? I said, sure, let me know. She said, last Friday we were completely caught up. She said, that has never happened before. She said, we were literally waiting on somebody to file something so that we could work through that process. That's the kind of experience and knowledge that I'm going to bring to this clerk's office to benefit it for years to come. This is really going to be something exciting that is going to change the way that the clerk's office do business, not only in Iberia Parish, but is changing the way the clerks are doing business across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huval, and we'll begin with you. In the current environment of online security challenges and ransomware attacks, what plans do you have to protect elections, civil, and criminal records in the clerk's office?
Very good question, and that's something that I'm probably most passionate about is those records. I think that's one of the duties that the clerk has to take in the most serious of ways. That's what the clerk's main function is to protect these records that belong to the parish. One of the other things that we're doing in Baton Rouge is we implemented the first ever, we partnered with Amazon, and they actually have a backup program that's called Glacier. And one of the things that it does is it's actually an online or in the cloud backup program that it's considered a worm drive. For those of you who don't know what worm stands for, it stands for write once, read many. So when a document comes in, it comes in like this. But once the judge signs it, that's a completely different document. So that document is not saved over that first one, but they're saved individually. And you can never go back and write anything on those documents, because if it does, there's a protection. It's called hashing these documents. And it's basically like, just to make it easy for you to understand, it's like a fingerprint for somebody. This is a fingerprint for the document. So we can actually go into court and prove that this document came in this way and it was changed on this day by this person. And we can also go in, and if we were subject to an attack like that, we can completely recreate the clerk's office, because everything that's stored there is not only the images, but the metadata that goes along with those images. The transactions, the images, who filed it, all that stuff is being saved. And not only is that being saved there, but the cost savings is unbelievable. When you think of a brick and mortar building, how much expense that it takes to have this brick and mortar. I'll just give you just a quick, for instance, being I'm on a yellow light. In Baton Rouge, I was talking to them a few months ago after we implemented this, and the cost was right around $36 for a month. Compare that to a brick and mortar. It's a lot of savings.
Thank you, Mr. Huval. Mr. Ditch?
Yes. Again, thank you. Cybersecurity is probably one of the biggest risks we face, not only in business, but also at the clerk's office. But I'm glad to be able to sit here up tonight and tell you that's something we've addressed. We address it each day. Over the last couple of weeks, we've addressed it by implementing a nearly $20,000 security upgrade for the local system here at your courthouse. We're also in the midst of upgrading our cloud-based system, which has already been upgraded to ensure that your data is safe. I agree. We need to get completely secure when it comes to your data and the data of the public in Iberia Parish. The good part for you as the audience, for you as the owner of those records, while nothing is 100%, we've learned that. Other government agencies have learned that. I can assure you, your data now is as safe as we can make it. I've also had the opportunity to work with Kyle Hardware, the Secretary of State, as they've actually implemented separate lines coming into our courthouse to ensure not data, but the election records, the election results are free from outside interference. It concerned me the last few years as we talked about Russian interference in our elections. It's a deep concern to me. I take that seriously. I think one of the greatest things we get the opportunity to do is vote on election day. As your clerk of court, I take your right very seriously. I'll continue to work with our government officials, both locally, state, and at the federal level, to ensure that your elections are safe, fair, and honest. I commit that to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. And now we'll continue with you. Do you consider the Iberia Parish Clerk's office to be a state-of-the-art operation? Why or why not? And what do you plan to change, if anything?
That's a great question, because this really excites me to talk about this. I go around, speak to civic groups throughout the parish. You know, when I go to speaking about employees, one of the biggest accomplishments I've had over the last 3 years was gaining the trust of the hardworking employees of the Clerk of Court's office. That wasn't easy. When I came to the clerk's office 3 years ago, I got to visit with each one of them. I asked them to let me prove myself. Let me earn your trust. That trust cannot be more evident than each weekend when these employees are walking door to door in this parish supporting my campaign. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of where we've gone. I'm very proud of where we're gonna go. And I couldn't be more honored to be your clerk of court. I thank them for their trust, and that trust and ability is the reason why we're gonna move forward in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. Mr. Huval?
Okay, I'll answer the question. I work throughout the state in I'm not just in one clerk's office, I work in multi-clerk's offices throughout the state. And one of the things that I get to see is the different software that people have, the way that the different clerk's offices work, the way that they're set up, whether it's a big size clerk's office, medium size, small office. I think that actually gives me a leg up to see what actually state of the art is. But not only that, I'm able to travel to these conferences because my company is constantly looking to be the best software provider that's out there. And to prove that we are that company, one of the things that we did once I was hired on by this guy, the owner of the company, asked me, what do we need to do? And I gave him specific instructions of everything that I felt needed to be done to move these clerks' offices forward. Because to me, in my opinion, the state of Louisiana was lagging behind, and I wanted to do something about it. So what we did was we created that app like I talked about. We were actually, as soon as we were finished it, we demoed it to a few offices, and the response that we got was overwhelming. The thing that we got was when is this thing ready and how much it's going to cost, because they want it. And we've got several that are lined up for installations of these things. One of the things that I'll say to prove that it is state of the art is that when East Baton Rouge put out an RFP looking for software, they were looking through the whole United States. So they had billion-dollar companies coming in from California, Utah, Texas. All these guys were bidding on this software to get the software from, that bid from Baton Rouge. And you know who ended up winning it? A little company in Shreveport, Louisiana, because we're doing stuff that nobody else in the United States is doing it. And I'm going to continue to push the envelope when it comes to that, because I want to make sure that this clerk's office is not lagging behind like we've been. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huval.
I'm gonna use this.
Yes, okay, you have 60 seconds for your rebuttal, Mr. Ditch.
Yes, and it's not necessarily a rebuttal. I got to talking about the employees and the trust. I lost my train of thought, and I had them looking at me, and I could tell. But one thing that trust did was let those employees get out of their comfort zone. And when we talk about state of the art, those employees have worked hard to institute not only e-recording within our office, but the ability to see mortgages and conveyances throughout the state. On August 28th, we're going to begin testing civil e-filing, which is something that has been talked about for years at the clerk's office. My employees have been through the initial stages of it, have tested it, and hopefully within the next 2 months, you're going to have access to the same system that's used in the federal courthouse. So I can tell you, your clerk of court's office is state of the art. And I thank those employees for getting out of their comfort zones, out of their box to bring it that way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ditch. Mr. Huval, we're going to begin the final question with you. What is an issue that has not been raised tonight, or perhaps one that has been raised but you think needs more discussion? And what are your thoughts about it?
I think right along what we just kind of got finished talking about, you know, the e-filing and e-recording, I think that's very important for the future. And I'll go even a little bit further to say how far that we were lagging behind. Since 2005, Jefferson Parish was actually e-recording and e-filing. So we're a little bit behind the 8 ball. And while I worked there, I begged and begged and begged, when can we get all of this electronic stuff going? And I was told that there was no law in place, which obviously there was some law in place because Jefferson was doing it. But that's what I get back to again, not go and fight for the citizens of Iberia Parish and making sure that if the law is not there, that it is there. It could be there. There was no reason why it should have taken this long. But the e-filing that I'm talking about that we're doing is completely different from the e-filing that they're talking about installing now. This is a true paperless environment from beginning to end. The judge signs electronically. The paper, even the paper that comes into the office, is immediately digitized right there, and it's moved throughout the courthouse in an electronic fashion. There's no more paper being lost, being missing, being sat on for days and weeks and months because nobody can find where it's at. We know exactly where the documents are at any time. We know exactly how long they've been there and who's not doing what. So it promotes productivity within the office, and I can tell you that's one of the big reasons why East Baton Rouge is seeing the efficiencies that they're seeing now, is because there's no longer hiding behind where the document is. There's no doubt where it's at. E-recording, which we're doing again, is completely different from the e-recording that they're describing. This is a completely paperless solution. It comes in paperless, and that's the way it stays. And this is one of the big things that I think is probably one of the top issues for the clerks moving forward. And that's why I pushed it whenever I got to this company where I am now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Huval. Mr. Ditch?
Yeah, being that this is the last question, and I'm assuming we have closings to follow this,
We will.
I would like to just take an opportunity, I don't think it's been mentioned tonight, but just to remember a hero from Iberia Parish. Our ex-governor will be laid to rest this week, Ms. Kathleen Babineau Blanco. And for us that have been in public service, who have loved this community for so long, I just think that it's appropriate tonight to take a moment of silence for our former governor, as well as 2 other families that are grieving this week. This has been a tough week, tough couple of weeks for Iberia Parish. And I can tell you, there's a lot of people, a lot of public servants that want to do the right thing, that do the right thing every day. So if we could just take our remaining time, even 10 or 15 seconds, just as quietly remember our ex-governor and those families that are hurting tonight, I think it would do us all a world of good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ditch. At this time, we will begin closing remarks. Earlier, Mr. Ditch began the opening remarks, so we will now begin with Mr. Huval. You each have 30 seconds.
Okay, I think that we kind of laid out 2 extremely different plans here. My plan is really focused on service within the clerk's office. That's my big push. I'm proud of the employees that have worked within the clerk's office. Well, just don't have time, but I'll ask that you please consider me for your next clerk of court. I am the most experienced, the most knowledgeable, and I ask that you please consider that on election day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Huval. Mr. Ditch?
Yeah, thanks again to the Chamber for tonight. 3 years ago, I took advantage of what has become one of the biggest blessings in my life. I went to work at an office that in the last 3 years I fell in love with. I fell in love with the work that we do. I fell in love with each employee that goes to work each day serving the people of Iberia Parish. I often have heard that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I have found that in the Iberia Parish Clerk of Court's office. I'm honored, I'm humbled, and I couldn't be more grateful. But I need your support, and I need your vote on October 12th to continue this service. Thank you.
Can I rebut his closing comment?
You can only rebut a question.
Twice? No?
Okay. This concludes tonight's forum for the Iberia Parish Clerk of Court. The next forum will begin at 7 p.m. for the Iberia Parish President. We certainly appreciate the time and effort put forth by the candidates here tonight. How about a round of applause for our candidates? Again, we wish all the candidates well and want to encourage all registered voters to exercise your right to vote in the upcoming election. This concludes this portion of our program. Be sure to spread the word about the forum postings on YouTube.